All right, I want to talk about this for a second. This is a recent article, of course, from CoinGeek. And I get it. Sometimes people feel as though, can you talk about something other than scalability and whatnot? Well, yeah, we can. But, when we talk about BSV, I mean, boy, oh boy, the absolute king master of scalability. Cool Cat is right. Nothing comes close. I remember, not doing all my research on BSV a while back. I was like, what is this guy talking about, man? He's always saying, laughing about some of these other ones that we're into. And they're like, it's not even close to BSV scalability. So we get that, right? He's right about that. But this right here, overlays versus indexers. And look at the date, January 4th, 2024, not that long ago, only about, 4 days ago. Overlays versus indexers, a move towards scalability in the BSV ecosystem. Now, this is cool because, even though we've seen, reports of like 25,000 TPS and, 100,000 TPS, and some people say a million. Satoshi obviously says in the trillions. So that sounds crazy, right? But I'm with him on that. This is well written, and there's some things to point out. And of course, with more of my research, I'll give you guys my own key takeaway, just like I did on the JASMY segment. So it says Bitcoin as a BSV with its massive scalability and robust architecture is an attractive platform. Very, very true. For enterprises and individual users alike. However, it also presents unique challenges. Right. We could be gung-ho BSV all day long, but everything still has a challenge. Adoption challenge, trust, in the market, trust with buyers challenge, all sorts of challenges. But this challenge is about managing data at a large scale. You talk about Michael Saylor boasting a big whoop-de-doo with, 4 to 8 megabyte block sizes. Give me a break. You got to understand the bigger picture. So this article will discuss, like it says, 2 different methods for handling data on the network, indexers and overlays, emphasizing why the shift towards the latter is becoming increasingly significant. Now, I'm not sharing this, you guys, should try to you nerd out about it, but there's some significance in regards to if you hold this asset, you understand the bigger picture of this. So you guys know, once in a while I'll talk about, for instance, the graph, GRT. I always call it the Google of crypto because in reality it is. We call it the Google of crypto because, basically speaking, look at Google, the world's largest, basically indexing platform, right? Who doesn't know about Google? But can you actually take BSV and also have that be part of the mix from indexing perspective? Yeah, you can. Last time I was with you guys, I think we talked about the whole thing of Stellar through Sorbonne. If you guys seen the Chop That video, talked about the whole thing of, actually competing with the likes of Chainlink. Chainlink is the king of oracles. Well, BSV competing with the likes of GRT, more like GRT competing with the likes of BSV because indexing. So indexers are truly essential to blockchain scanning systems. Like it says, the idea behind an indexer is simplicity itself. True. Just like you and I, we do a Google search. You might not even use Google, whatever search engine you use. But whatever one you use, it's an indexing platform. We want the ease of access. It's got to be simple. So simplicity itself, as long as any transaction is included in a block on the blockchain, the indexer will find it and have it in its records. Hence, a user only needs to send a transaction to the miners and get it included in a block, basically. And then the indexer, regardless of who operates it, is expected to sift through the transactions and pick out the relevant ones. However, like it says, while basic, this model presents tangible limitations. I know this is a lot verbatim, but I don't want to skip any of this. This is good stuff. When tested against scalability. For one, indexers are expected to scan the entire blockchain, also process that to make it neither technological nor economic sense as a blockchain grows. This leads to various problems. I think for the most part we know this, including indexers crashing or becoming unable to keep up when large blocks are mined. Right. Scalability problems. If anything, reaching certain thresholds, having redundancy issues and so on. I have to have the same user experience as you and everybody else, and especially if we want to achieve, as the saying goes, full scalability or have network, at the network at max capacity. It can't be running slow, and if it is, that is scalability problem. So hence comes into the whole term of what you see on the screen called overlay networks. It's a way for peer-to-peer, peer-to-peer scalability. And there's a little video here, and I've already reviewed it earlier, but it says, in contrast, two indexers overlay networks operate a vastly different principle, one in sync with peer-to-peer ethos that is fundamental to, of course, BSV. Now, this is only about under 3 minutes. It's a good informative video. And I'm going to give you guys some key takeaways of why I feel as though this is significant for you, not from a nerd perspective, but as far as being or I should say, an investor into BSV. So stay tuned to that. Let's go ahead and get you over there. Here it is. Again, under 3 minutes. What are overlay networks? This is straight from the BSV Association. And listen to this. This is pretty good stuff. I thought it was significant. Thought I would bring it to you guys. Please smash a like if you haven't done so already. This is one of the key videos for tonight. Here we go.
Overlay networks are special network layers built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. These networks interpret transaction data in their own unique ways to provide additional services or functionalities beyond sending and receiving Bitcoin. One example is the UTXO-based overlay network known as Confederacy. The concept of topics is key to understanding overlay networks. Each topic represents a defined set of data rules. When previous outputs are spent in new transactions, these data rules determine which UTXOs become valid members of the overlay network. This means that each topic within the overlay network forms its own unique network. These overlay networks are highly secure as they leverage Bitcoin's built-in double spend prevention mechanism. Users do not need to trust any centralized party, which reduces the risk of fraud. Additionally, these networks are scalable, as users only need to keep track of transactions that are directly relevant to them. Another advantage of overlay networks is efficient data management. They provide a means of storing, searching, and retrieving data in a decentralized way. Lookup services make it easy for users to find specific UTXOs within a topic by handling queries based on specific search criteria. This enables efficient categorization and retrieval of data. Overlay networks also offer monetization opportunities. With a solution called Packet Pay, network node operators can charge fees for the use of their overlay network and lookup services. This incentivizes more people to become node operators, promoting further decentralization and network resiliency. In conclusion, Bitcoin overlay networks like Confederacy enhance the utility, security, and scalability of the Bitcoin network. They provide a means of storing, searching, and retrieving data in a decentralized way, opening up new use cases and benefits. As technology continues to evolve, overlay networks have the potential to drive the adoption of blockchain technology in various industries. Learn more about overlay networks and unlock their potential in the digital economy.
Okay. That was cool to watch. I was glad to share that with you guys. Going to elaborate just a little bit more about overlay for a brief bit before I give you guys some of my, my own key takeaway, my own notes, and so on. So basically speaking, let's take you back to what you saw here, overlays versus indexers. So you heard what this lady basically just mentioned, right? But, I'm going to blow this up a little bit more for you to follow. Here we go. Actually, I'll put up 150 on the Zoom. So, yeah, rather than expecting, let me double check my settings. Can you see it? You can see it. All right. So, rather than expecting what? Hold on a second. Let me put the logo back on. My bad. I always like to have some of this stuff back on. It kind of helps. All right. So, rather than expecting an overlay node, just kind of like what the lady said in the video, to scan all blockchain transactions, overlay networks place the responsibility on just that, transaction setters to submit the relevant transactions directly to the overlays that they concern. We're going to talk about utility, right? That's a lot of utility. This means Overlays get transactions directly from the creators instead of scanning the entire blockchain as an indexer does. Now, about this whole thing about like-minded individuals, or overlays, I should say, the operators itself communicating about the same protocols specifics can sync the important transactions in a manner of reminiscent of the Bitcoin miners' direct transaction communication itself. Ultimately, the primary difference between an overlay and an indexer I should say, while indexers scan the blockchain, overlays accept transactions directly from the sender or share overlay nodes. Like I said, presents significant scalability advantages because overlays are not required to scan the entire blockchain, unlike indexers. And that right there separates BSV from the other ones. Think about it, right? Because when we talk about scalability advantages, this is literally it. Well, not it, but part of quite a few things that has advantage over the others, right? So this can certainly happen, like it says later, but the responsibility lies with individuals or entities needing transactions or data specifically reported. There's more about this. I'm not getting into all this, but one thing I want to share with you guys in regards to my key takeaway in my notes, basically speaking, is this. Given the advantages, it's time that BSV app developers will widely adopt and work on a further understanding of overlay networks over indexers, ensuring BSV maintains its scalability advantages, of course, over other blockchains. Very true. But at the end of the day, for you, me, and everybody else that isn't into all this nerd talk, why is this significant? That's what I'd be asking. Well, basically, the potential for overlay networks to revolutionize BSV scalability, as well as those app development, is significant, of course, for numerous reasons. And I'm not going to get into like a whole grocery list of it, but I'll give you guys some of the key ones that I found in regards to my own research. So an obvious one is improved scalability. Yeah, no kidding. BSV already boasts itself as an impressive on-chain transaction capacity compared to like other blockchains. Yeah, no kidding. However, you got to keep in mind, BSV relies solely on indexers for data access, and it can still create bottlenecks, but the overlay networks offload of that burden of processing and indexing data from indexers allows them to focus on core blockchain functions like transactions, verification, security. Bottom line is this. This translates to faster data access, of course, for those BSV apps, smoother user experiences, and the potential to handle even higher transaction volumes without sacrificing decentralization or security. But another thing I specifically like is not having the whole issue of, oh my gosh, it's the future. We're way, many years down the road, and everybody's using this BSV, if you will, right? The real Bitcoin. And they're like, oh my gosh, look at the redundancy issues. Look at the lag, as some people say, like, the gamers of the world. This is so slow. We're at full capacity. The Bitcoin network is too jam-packed. No. Prepare for the future by realizing the potential problems now instead of then. Right? Right. What about enhanced efficiency? Isn't that the whole purpose of being into some of this stuff? More efficient, more faster, more scalable? Right. This allows app developers to build custom network focused on basically specific data sets for user groups. This overlay that we showed in the demo, video, whatever you want to call it, promotes targeted data distribution and even retrieval. This eliminates the need for all BSV apps to sift through the entire blockchain, like we mentioned before, for relevant information, saving resources, reducing network congestion. I remember back in the days of like even playing video games, Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, and so on. Something about like when you do a query on a server list, sometimes you get too big of a list, and as a result, it kills your internet. Well, if something that low a scale can happen as far as a remote video game on the PC, can you imagine what's going to happen at full scalability on something huge like Bitcoin, yeah, you can get the idea. Developers can specifically tailor their overlays to cater to specific needs. And it's going to optimize performance, streamlining data access. Streamlining. That sounds like a great term, does it not? All right. I'd like to get into the whole thing about increased flexibility and innovation too much. But one thing I do want to mention in regards to innovation is this whole thing of this overlay network specifically dedicated to tracking supply chain movements in real time. We cover XDC quite a bit here, or, as much as we can. And of course, XDC stands out as far as the whole thing with the trade sector of the world, trade finance and all that stuff. But can BSV be part of the whole mix? The answer is yes. How so? Well, this overlay function for this utility in BSV dedicated to tracking supply chain movements in real time, or another network facilitating secure voting systems on BSV. Doesn't that sound good? The possibilities, of course, are endless and can very well revolutionize various other industries, not just trade. But to have BSV part of that, were you aware of that? Pretty cool. There's this whole thing of a stronger network effect. Keep in mind that this is going to attract more developers, more users. This creates a positive feedback loop, if you will. It strengthens BSV's ecosystem as a whole, right? Giant conglomerate, and further cements its scalability advantage. BSV has to, of course, maintain an edge over the competition, and you consistently see this happening. We see interviews with Dr. Levid, obviously, Dr. Craig, right, and so on. Creating an edge over the competition is something that's on their priority list. How so? Well, the ever-evolving world of blockchain tech, staying ahead of the curve is, of course, crucial, but, of course, for BSV. By embracing overlay networks like the one we highlighted tonight, BSV devs can ensure the blockchain remains at the forefront of scalability and innovation. And say what you want, this is where the BSV army pounds on her chest all the time. Because we realize, or at least the devs, I'm not a dev, I do the research, that failing to do so and recognize all this could risk losing ground to other blockchains that are actively exploring similar solutions. True. There's always competition, even if they say that there isn't. In conclusion, for you, me, and everybody else, before we get into the next part about BSV, the widespread adoption and understanding of overlay networks by BSV app devs is very, very significant because it's a real opportunity. How so? It's necessary. It's necessary to understand. That there's a shift, a paradigm, if you will, in regards to the potential to solidify BSV's position as the quote-unquote go-to blockchain for scalability and efficient decentralized apps, opening up a world, of course, of possibilities, not just for you and me, but for devs. If I'm going to talk about the likes of Stellar with Sorbonne, because that brings in devs from ETH and other particular blockchains to build with only one line of code, or talk about Overledger with Quant with 3 lines of code, you better believe that BSV is also trying to attract more devs. They could boast all they want about all the scalability, but still you have to attract other devs. More of that, not just mass adoption for retail, but more like mass adoption to attract more developers, right? Absolutely. All right, this part is actually the part of the conclusion that I want to get into before we wrap up the BSV segment. So as we know that in the past, we've seen some articles, we've seen some interviews talk about the whole thing of, BSV, Bitcoin association with, for instance, like MasterCard. You got to keep in mind, MasterCard and Visa, if they very well embrace BSV's quote unquote infinite scalability in that tech, how much will that be worth? And what would be the significance of changing to BSV's tech? Now, this is the part that you do want to pay attention to as a BSV investor. While it's difficult to predict all this, again, I'm not a fortune teller, you got to keep in mind there's many factors that could influence the price in regards to all this. I'm going to give you guys a quick breakdown, a few key things. So for one, you could see a potential huge value increase, not just the whole thing of Craig Wright being Satoshi Nakamoto, like I said before, one of those comments that we read earlier, just in case you missed it, this is a good one, and this will be part of this chopped up version. This is from Simo, if he's watching. Shout out to you, Simo. And again, I said this at the beginning of the coverage of the night on the live. But he says, even if Craig Wright is found not to be Satoshi Nakamoto, BlackRock still has it written to their ETF application that they are allowed to pick the Bitcoin node that they best see fit to serve their purposes. This is from a comment from our YouTube channel that I just love. He says, that's the rug pull right there. You cannot look past that clause. BlackRock knows something. As Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple has basically said, quote, if a coin has utility, it has value. Is he missing something? No, he's not missing anything at all. So my point is this increased demand for BSV, whether it's from MasterCard, Visa, or whoever, has a lot of significance, because if they were to, fully adopt BSV, it would significantly increase the demand, of course, for this particular cryptocurrency, potentially leading to substantial price increase. Not just the whole idea of, hey, Craig Wright won the COPPA trial, right? Some estimates suggest the price could reach several hundred thousands of dollars per coin. Some of you guys believe that too. Now it sounds nuts. What about a enhanced network effect? Well, there would be one. MasterCard and Visa themselves would bring in a lot of adoption. How so? Because they're still the two key ones that the mainstream still use, right? And they still boast about roughly 24 to 28,000, give or take, TPS with those two. It's going to attract other major financial institutions and businesses to BSV. Why? Because it's already proven itself with, for instance, MasterCard, Visa, and some others. And of course, that would further strengthen the network effect and drive up, of course, up the value. Again, cause and effect, supply and demand. It's a no-brainer. Now, there would be improved BSV perception in regards to all this. How so? Well, BSV faces criticism for its association, as we know, with Craig Wright, to being like Satoshi Nakamoto for scaling disagreements with, of course, the Bitcoin community. They can say what they want, but I think this is all going to come out in the wash. But MasterCard in itself, and even Visa's endorsement, could significantly improve BSV's public perception and boost investor confidence. And that is something that I have been, in my own way, pounding home 110% to you guys all the time. Why? Because even if Craig Wright isn't Satoshi, which I believe that he is, but even if he wasn't, this never dismissed the utility here. Nothing comes close compared to BSV as far as the scalability and its TPS performance. Not even close. All right. What about the significance of changing to BSV's tech? Because at the end of the day, if MasterCard and Visa are really going to do this, then why? Other than scalability. Well, for one, faster and cheaper transactions, right? If it's going to save them a bunch of money, it's worth pointing out. Just kind of like with the likes of Ripple's XRP and so on, right? And Stellar and this whole thing of ISO 222. If ISO 222 full implementation is going to help the central banks of the world, right, save, what is it, guys, that we came up with? $60 billion on a $10 trillion overseas cross-border payment through the old system of SWIFT, then you got to go with the new thing. Well, this is not ISO 222 we're talking about. This is MasterCard and Visa. At the end of the day, if you could save both of those companies a significant amount of money, then it doesn't matter if there's a bad title behind anything. They're going to go with the winning. They're going to bet on the winning horse, right? Absolutely. So, yes, faster and cheaper will make it more efficient and affordable, even for cross-border payments, if that was the thing. Like some of you guys point out, Cool Cat Crypto and so on, that BSV is going to be used for cross-border payments, online transactions, micropayments. And another thing I want to point out before we wrap this up is, what about greater financial inclusion? Now, hear me out. BSV's low transaction fees, scalability could enable financial inclusion, of course, for individuals, businesses, currently excluded, of course, from the traditional financial systems. And on top of that, how about finally having Visa and MasterCard break away from the traditional centralized entities and embracing DeFi? Now, it sounds nuts, but we know that it's out with the old and with the new. And I think that's going to happen. So, MasterCard and Visa, which are centralized systems, BSV in itself is decentralized, immutable blockchain network, as we know. This gives the opportunity for greater security, transparency, and censorship resistance for financial transactions. So it's saying, look, you guys aren't part of DeFi. You're part of these centralized systems, but we'll save you a ton of money, billions, right? Maybe even more than that in the long run, maybe even trillions, many years down the road, if you simply embrace us as a BSV. Now, of course, there's a lot of challenges and uncertainties, such as regulation, technical integration. Obviously, there's other competition, but overall, from what I gathered, and this is us wrapping this up for tonight, MasterCard and Visa adopting BSV could be like just unbelievably significant because it's going to lead to a substantial increase in BSV's value and drive wider adoption, of course, for the technology. But you also got to keep in mind that, you know, BSV's technical merits, claims to being the true Bitcoin, I think is going to come out in the wash, as the saying goes. When you see time and time again, all this evidence is being presented, and it's like, wow, the evidence keeps showing that this is the real true Bitcoin, and that you have these block sizes that are just capped off. Was it, guys, 4 megabytes, 8 megabytes, with some of these other ones, right? Like BCH and so on. And that BSV has stayed true to the original white paper of being like basically the true original Bitcoin. Then I do still stand by the statement that the likes of Larry Fink and some of these other guys from BlackRock are talking in code. They're not going to specifically say BSV, but they always say Bitcoin, and they always talk about scalability. Go back and watch some of the videos. So if it's scalability and they're saying Bitcoin, how does BTC have that? My answer is it doesn't. So they are talking in code. And back to the other guys, you know, what he's mentioned was that Mr. Simo, BlackRock writing that into the ETF application, that they are allowed to pick a Bitcoin node that they see best sit to serve their purpose. Well, if their purpose is cross-border payments and scalability, there's no way that it's BTC.